Hello everyone and welcome back to another lesson. In the previous lesson, we saw how the for each method executes a provided function once for each element in the iterator, and then it listed all the elements that was found in our from wrapper that we passed in a string of numbers into. So moving on, we are going to be looking at the map method in this lesson. So the map method returns a new iterator with all elements transformed by a map function. So a map method returns a new iterator with all elements transformed by a map function. And let's take a look at a practical example of what a map function does, or what it is in JavaScript. So I want to change this to the map method returns a new iterator with all elements transformed by a map function. Now, let's get back to the business. So, like how we've been doing in the past. So, the first thing to do is to create an iterator, which I already have on my screen. And now that I've created an iterator, I want to map it. I want to map the iterator because I'm using a mapped method. And so how do I do that? So I can just call it mapped iterator equals to my iterator dot map, which is the function that I am working on. And then I will also pass a function as an argument into it, just as we've done in the past. And now that I have mapped this, now it's time to iterate over the elements. Iterate over the elements. Let text equals to, for context of mapped iterator, then text plus equals x plus document dot get element by id one dot inner html equals text. Of course, this is not going to work because I can already see errors in my code. This red squiggly line. Now look at this, cannot be declared as. And now take a look. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So it will take each of these elements and multiply it by 2. That's what the function argument is doing. So take the number elements and then multiply it by 2. Then here iterate over all the elements. So iterate all over the mapped iterator with these functions, and then that is why you can see this output that we are seeing here. So this is how the map method work. Moving away from map method, let's look at another method which is called the reduce method. The reduce method applies a reducer function against an accumulator and each element to reduce it to a single value. So one thing that is very peculiar to all these methods is that you will see that most of them, they take in function as arguments in order to perform what they are needed to do. So this is a reduce method, and let's take a look at an example of it in my code editor. The reduce method executes a reducer function for each iterator elements. And so I can wipe this off, as well as this. Now, the approach to reduce function is a little bit different from the other methods that we've treated. Here in that before we create the iterator, of course, we are going to create an iterator, but we first want to start with the function because the definition is that it applies a reducer function against an accumulator and each element to reduce it to a single value. So let's make that reducer function first before we declare our iterator itself. So I'll call it my function. And the function will take two parameters, total and number. And now the body of my function will return the sum of the total and number. So now my function is ready, right? Then it's time to create my iterator. Create an iterator. Const my iterator equals to iterator dot from. See this from that you keep seeing? It's just a wrapper that would take any function, anything that you put inside and convert it into an object, whether an array, a string, a set, or a map. So it's an helper function for iterators that will accept whatever value is passed into it and convert it into an object. Now, let's now reduce the iterator using what we have initially, which is what we have in our function. So let's assign it to a variable and call that variable name results. Now, this is how to reduce my iterator. Reduce, which is the name of my method. So what does my method expect? What does reduce method expect? A reducer function against an accumulator. So pass it the function that we have declared. And that is just going to be my function. Now that I have this, so let me check the output. The sum of all items is results. So now where is this coming from? So I hope you can see this. So the value here, so this will reduce what we have here from this function, which is being passed in as an argument of the reduce method, and then give us the output. So the sum of all items is 250. So don't forget that my function's body is to return the total plus number. So which means that it will add everything that we have right here inside my function together and give us the output. So you see that it matches the definition here that it will apply a reducer function against an accumulator and each element to reduce it to a single value, which means that it will combine all the elements or an accumulator and reduce them into a single value, which means that it will combine all these elements and reduce it to a single value, and that is why you are seeing 250, which happens to be a single value. So this is how the reduce method and the map method works. Thank you, and in the next lesson, I'll see you.